I was halfway through my brother's engagement dinner when his fiancée's boss, who had barely glanced at me all night, suddenly froze, looked across the table and asked, "Wait, you built that app? Hi, I'm Aurelia Wynn. My family thinks I'm the underachiever, the one who wasted her potential." What they didn't know was the billion-dollar deal they kept bragging about, it was mine. And the woman marrying my brother, she was negotiating to buy my company without knowing I was the founder. So tell me, have you ever let someone underestimate you just to watch their jaw drop later? What would you have done if you were me? I was born in Lindenbrook, Massachusetts, the kind of city where reputation was currency and children were groomed for greatness before they lost their baby teeth. My mother, Vivian Wynn, was the kind of woman who made law students cry and then thank her for it. She wore tailored blazers like armor and measured love in measurable achievements. My father, Colton Wynn, built his construction firm from scratch and expected his children to continue the empire, either in courtrooms or cockpit seats. And they did. Well, one of them did. My brother Damien was everything they hoped for. Firstborn, athletic, top of his class, now a commercial airline captain who wore his success like a tailored suit, crisp and unquestioned. Then there was me. I was the one who didn't fit. The daughter who made websites instead of joining the debate team, who coded her own homework tracker instead of asking for a planner, who talked about system bugs when everyone else bragged about varsity scores. I remember one dinner when I was 15. I'd just finished building my first functioning mobile app. It wasn't much, just a calendar with voice reminders and color-coded categories, but it worked. It helped people. I told them, proud, nervous. Dad blinked. "Sounds cute," he said. Mom barely looked up from her case files. "Just don't let it distract you from real goals, honey. Law school applications don't fill themselves." And Damien. He chuckled and passed me the peas. That night I learned the art of nodding like it didn't sting, of shrinking my joy to fit the silence. My room became my real world. Sticky notes and source code wallpapered the space like vines. Stacked pizza boxes and glowing screens were my witnesses. While Damien's shelves boasted trophies, mine held coffee-stained startup books and duct-taped prototypes. The word founder wasn't whispered in my family, only fallback. But I didn't care, at least I told myself that. College brought fresh air. I got accepted into a solid computer science program on scholarship. But when I told them, "You could have gone Ivy," Dad said, disappointed. "You're wasting your potential," Mom added. "You don't want to be 30 and stuck in tech support, do you?" I packed quietly that fall, and I left more than home behind. I left the desperate need for approval, because somewhere deep down I decided if they wouldn't see me now, I'd build something so undeniable they'd never be able to look away again. College wasn't freedom, it was ignition. I met Maris Dupree in sophomore year. She was sharp, bold, and just as unorthodox as I was. We bonded over a malfunctioning projector and mutual disdain for bureaucracy. By junior year, we were sketching ideas on napkins between classes. One day, Maris tossed her notebook at me during a late-night diner run. "Healthcare communication is broken," she said. "Let's fix it." That's how Watch Clarity Link was born. At first, it was just an idea. A streamlined platform for patient-provider updates, medical alerts, real-time consent tracking. Something simple, intuitive, something human. We worked out of her aunt's garage between empty ramen cups and a heater that coughed more than it warmed. But we were building something that mattered. While everyone else prepared for internships, I was preparing pitch decks. We applied to college accelerator programs and snagged third place in a local startup grant. That $5,000 felt like $5 million. But at home, nothing changed. Every holiday, I returned to the same questions. Are you applying for real jobs yet? Still playing with those little apps? One Thanksgiving, I tried. I mentioned the hospital that emailed us asking for a meeting. Dad raised an eyebrow. "You mean they're hiring you as IT support?" "No," I said softly. "They're interested in a pilot of our platform." Mom didn't even blink. "Well, don't sign anything without a lawyer. And remember, startup deals rarely go anywhere." I stopped talking after that. When the Points Lindenbrook General Hospital sent a follow-up asking if we could present our prototype next month, I stared at the screen in silence. My fingers tingled with adrenaline. My chest burned with pride. And still I closed the laptop. I didn't tell them, because if they saw me fail, they'd call it expected. But if I succeeded, I wanted it to be so loud, they'd hear it whether they wanted to or not. 6 months later, Clarity Link was live in 3 regional clinics. Doctors were sending fewer faxes. Patients were missing fewer appointments. Administrators were calling it a miracle wrapped in clean UX. Maris and I high-fived in coffee-stained hoodies and cried when we paid ourselves a full paycheck for the first time. It wasn't much, but it was ours. We finally left the garage for a one-room office above a bakery. The scent of cinnamon rolls became our unofficial mascot. Then came Damien's engagement dinner announcement. "She's brilliant," Mom gushed on the phone. VP of Strategic Acquisitions at Halcyon Systems. Ivy League, speaks at conferences. You'll love her. My stomach dropped. Halcyon Systems. One of the companies we'd pitched to 6 months ago. They hadn't bit back then, but their analysts had quietly subscribed to our API ever since. I met Callista Rowe 2 weeks later at a family brunch. She was poised, perfectly polished, with a voice like glass, cool, clear, unshakable. She hugged Mom like they were sorority sisters. Even Dad looked impressed. Damien beamed beside her like a boy who'd won a trophy wife and a business deal. When I introduced myself, she smiled warmly. "Nice to meet you, and what do you do?" I opened my mouth, then paused. "Database consultant," I nearly said. But instead I offered a vague, "I work in health tech." Her interest faded instantly. "Oh, that's neat." Neat. I spooned another bite of dry quiche and nodded along as she explained Halcyon's acquisition process, casually dropping phrases like disruptive vertical integrations and scaling mid-market innovation. Nobody in that room knew I had co-founded a platform currently under Halcyon's internal review. Nobody knew I was the target, until an email accidentally landed in my inbox the following Tuesday. Sent from a shared industry contact, the message thread was brief. Reclarity link internal valuation. Lead Callista Rowe. Status preparing due diligence presentation for board. I stared at the screen. Heat flooded my chest. Callista was preparing to pitch the acquisition of my company. And she had no idea the founder sat across from her at family dinners. I didn't know whether to laugh or run. "Make sure you find something appropriate," Mom said, tapping her teacup with unnecessary force. "The skylight atrium isn't exactly casual, you know." I nodded. She gave me a once-over like she always did, measuring my worth in fabric choices and shoe polish. I was wearing a linen shirt and clean jeans. It wasn't enough. "It's Damien's big night," she continued, stirring her tea with that slow, lawyerly calm. "You don't want to draw the wrong kind of attention." I bit back the urge to ask what kind of attention I ever drew in this family. Dad chimed in later that evening. "I was talking to Frank Carter. He still runs HR at Steel Ridge Developers. Says they've got a junior analyst opening. Could be good for you. Real stable." "Thanks," I replied. Stable like a cage. Meanwhile, ClarityLink had crossed 10,000 active users. We'd just onboarded our 5th full-time engineer. We were holding 2 pilot contracts and had 6 more pending. But at home, I was still the one figuring it out. Damien, in contrast, was glowing. Every update from him was received like gospel. Pilot promotion, new bonus, first-class flights. Mom called him her anchor. Dad said he was the son he always pictured. I was the footnote, the error in the system, still trying to debug my life apparently. Then the email came. Subject: formal offer, ClarityLink acquisition terms. Sender: Halcyon Systems, Strategy Division. CC Callista Rowe. I read it 3 times before breathing. Halcyon had formally initiated an acquisition process. Estimated valuation: 115 million Ta. Terms: non-public executive retention clause for 3 years, full tech autonomy. Timeline: final review pending presentation to Halcyon's internal board, led by Callista herself. I sat there, fingers frozen over the trackpad, heart hammering like a war drum. So this was it. After years of being the family's invisible daughter, my life's work was being appraised by the woman they worshipped. The woman who still thought I was in health tech. And in 2 weeks, I'd be clinking glasses with her at the head table. Should I say something? I asked Maris over black coffee and code reviews. She didn't look up. If you wanted to, you would have already. I tapped my mug. She's about to acquire us and she doesn't even know I'm the founder. Maris finally glanced over, eyes calm. She will. If she's worth anything, she'll figure it out. She paused, then smirked. And if not, that's not your problem. I didn't respond. But something about her confidence was grounding, reassuring even. That week, Health Tech Monthly emailed for final approval. Their feature, Ghost Founder of the Year, was running front page next issue. Aurelia W., photographed from behind, staring at the screen of a glowing platform that had transformed patient care for thousands. I didn't ask for a retake, didn't ask to hide, but I didn't ask for the spotlight either. It was strange, this edge I walked, still invisible yet undeniable. 2 nights before the engagement party, I stared at my open closet. The dress code, according to Mom, was cocktail formal. I owned exactly one black sheath dress. Clean lines, no shimmer, timeless. I laid it across my bed. It looked sharp, like armor. I didn't need to make an entrance. I just needed to walk in standing tall. The night before the dinner, Callista posted a selfie with Damien tagged. Ready to celebrate forever with my favorite pilot. Big things coming at Halcyon too. I stared at the caption. Big things. She had no idea how big. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a calendar notification. Skylight Atrium, 7:00 p.m. Damien and Callista engagement dinner. I stared at myself in the mirror before I left. Pulled my hair into a low twist, slipped on matte lipstick and a watch I'd bought with our very first contract. By the time I arrived at the glass-paneled venue, the city had turned gold in the twilight. Inside, the chandeliers glimmered, champagne fizzed, the room hummed with curated importance. And then I saw her, Callista. She was laughing with Damien's boss near the bar until she turned, and her eyes landed on me. Not just a glance. Longer, sharper, her head tilted just slightly, not in suspicion, not in greeting, but as if she were trying to place me, and something in her expression said she almost had. The clinking of glasses signaled the first toast. My father stood suit perfectly pressed, voice full of pride. To Damien, who's made this family proud every single day, and to Callista, a woman of brilliance and vision. Together, you're unstoppable. Applause followed like a well-trained choir. Mom chimed in next, sharing a rehearsed story about Damien winning his first science fair. How even as a boy he set the standard. She beamed at Callista, calling her the daughter we never knew we needed. I sat near the end of the table next to a cousin I barely remembered. My name hadn't come up once, and yet I wasn't invisible, not to Callista. Throughout the first course, her gaze kept returning to me. Once as the server poured wine. Again when someone mentioned Halcyon's recent expansion. I caught her watching me not with disdain, but with curiosity. Like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Halfway through the entree, she leaned slightly across the table. Sorry, she said with a soft frown. This is random, but your last name is Wynn, right? I nodded slowly. Are you related to Clarity Link? The room didn't hush, but in my body it did. Everything went still. My knife hovered over the roast. I looked up, straight into her eyes. I'm not related, I said clearly. I'm the founder. Silence wasn't total, but it was loud. Forks paused. Conversations faltered. And Callista. She blinked. Once, then stared, really stared. I'd crossed a line. One that couldn't be uncrossed. When I said the words, I'm the founder, I didn't flinch. But inside, every part of me trembled. Not out of fear, out of something sharper. Something I hadn't let myself feel in years. Vindication. Callista blinked again, slow and deliberate, like she was recalculating everything. I didn't elaborate. I let the silence do what it needed to do, because everything that led to this moment was by design. The idea for signing Clarity Link wasn't born out of ambition. It was born out of frustration. In my sophomore year, my roommate's grandmother died from a preventable medication conflict. Wrong chart. Missed allergy flag. 3 hospitals. 3 systems. 0 coordination. Maris and I couldn't let it go. She mapped flowcharts on our window glass. I coded prototypes until sunrise. We weren't building a product. We were building a lifeline. But no one took us seriously. Investors looked at us, 2 young women, no MBAs, no industry clout, and smiled politely. Hospitals ignored our emails. One even suggested we get a male CTO if we wanted credibility. We ate rejection for breakfast and kept building. Our first pilot was a community clinic that agreed to a 30-day trial. We stayed on site, took notes, adjusted features on the fly. By the end of that month, their miscommunication errors dropped by 47%. They didn't just keep us, they paid us. That's when I registered Clarity Link as an LLC under my own name. Maris and I split everything down the middle. She handled user design, compliance, and strategy. I handled code infrastructure and partnerships. Our families thought we were unemployed, unstable, unrealistic. I let them. Because I learned early, especially with my parents. The moment you show progress, they'll claim ownership. I didn't want their name on this. So I stopped talking, stopped updating. When Dad asked if I needed help finding a job, I said I was doing fine with contract work. When Mom asked if I'd given up on law school yet, I laughed. Meanwhile, Maris and I grew our user base. From clinics to outpatient centers to urgent care chains. Every contract bought us another month of runway, another engineer, another feature pushed live. We pitched Halcyon once a year ago. They passed. But someone on their team must have remembered us because 6 months later they started using our Sandbox API. Silently, cautiously. They were watching us grow. Then came the email. It wasn't just a term sheet, it was recognition. A formal offer from Halcyon Systems to acquire ClarityLink for $115 million. Structured equity optional retention bonuses, full product autonomy. It was everything founders dream of. And the woman who signed the outreach, Callista Rowe, when I saw her name, I didn't feel panic. I felt strange calm. I didn't need to destroy her, didn't need to confront. I just needed to let things unfold. I declined to reveal my identity. The offer meetings were all handled by our legal team and Maris. I stayed silent, off camera, invisible by design. The media nicknamed me the Ghost Founder. Part legend, part silhouette. They speculated, invented, admired. But I never corrected them, because I wasn't hiding out of fear. I was protecting my success from the very people who dismissed me. I didn't need to be seen by my family. Not yet. Not until the moment they couldn't look away. The day before the engagement dinner, Health Tech Monthly confirmed our cover story would run the following Monday. They didn't need a full interview, just a final quote. I sent them 5 words. Success doesn't need permission anymore. I closed my laptop, then picked up my phone. The message was short. I sent it to Maris. Tomorrow I stopped shrinking. Walking into the skylight atrium, I felt like a storm contained in silk. Not flashy, not loud, just undeniable. The room was a curation of everything my parents valued: money, prestige, polished smiles. Waiters served foie gras canapes. Guests discussed private schools and ski vacations. Nobody asked what I did. Nobody ever did. Until Callista. Her voice didn't raise when she asked, but it echoed in my chest. Wait, your last name is Wynn? Everything slowed. And when I said, I'm the founder, I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I didn't smile. I let the weight of the truth settle across the white linen table like spilled wine. That was my plan all along. Not to make a scene. Just to exist so fully, they had no choice but to reckon with it. That night when the dinner ended, I walked out quietly, but I could feel their eyes on my back. My father didn't speak. My mother looked pale. Damien avoided my gaze. Callista stood still, holding her champagne, blinking slowly like a woman who'd just been handed a puzzle and realized she'd been staring at the missing piece all along. And I didn't owe them a single word, because success had already spoken for me. For a moment, nobody moved. The clink of forks, the murmur of soft jazz from the restaurant speakers, everything felt like it had been dialed down to 0. Then Callista set her champagne flute down, very carefully. You're the Aurelia Wynn from ClarityLink, she asked, her voice louder this time, cutting through the buzz like a scalpel. The founder we're acquiring for $115 million. Several heads turned. Damien choked on his water. My mother dropped her napkin. My father stared at me, blinking like I'd spoken in a different language. I didn't look away. I nodded once, yes. Callista exhaled a breath that almost sounded like a laugh: disbelief, amazement, something in between. I didn't know. We've been preparing acquisition terms. You're the founder. My cousin Margaret actually gasped. Someone dropped a bread knife. And then the murmurs began. Damien's boss leaned over to whisper something. An aunt across the table mouthed, $115 million, like she was seeing zeros float above my head. My mother was the first to speak. Why didn't you tell us? Her voice cracked an edge between confusion and defensiveness. As your mother, Aurelia, I had a right to know. I turned toward her, measured. Would you have listened? She opened her mouth, closed it. My father tried next, standing slowly like he could regain control with posture alone. This is impressive, he said, choosing his words carefully. But let's not pretend you did this alone. Surely that computer science scholarship, those values we raised you with, played a part. I stared at him. The values that told me I was wasting my life? Silence again. Damien finally spoke, low, almost hurt. All this time, you never said a word. I did, I said quietly. You just never heard it. Callista broke the tension, standing and addressing the table like a polished executive suddenly dropped into a soap opera. I think it's safe to say tonight turned out more exciting than expected, she said, with a small laugh. Then to me, we'll talk soon, on a professional level. I nodded. Professional was fine. Clean, distant. The rest of dinner was a blur. My relatives who'd never asked about my work now peppered me with questions about how to invest in startups. My father tried to joke that maybe now you'll buy the house next door. My mother leaned in to whisper, I always said you had something special. I smiled politely, but inside I felt nothing, because they weren't celebrating me. They were recalculating, repositioning, trying to make my story fit their narrative now that it was convenient. 3 days later, Health Tech Monthly dropped the headline. The Ghost Genius. Aurelia Wynn revealed as founder of a 115 Clarity Link deal. My inbox exploded. LinkedIn requests, media interviews, investment offers. I granted one interview, just one. And when asked why I kept my identity hidden so long, I said I wanted to succeed before they tried to rewrite how I got there. At home, things shifted. My mother sent me books about women in tech. My father forwarded articles about venture capital. Damien stayed quiet for a while. Then one evening, he showed up at my apartment with 2 craft beers and no agenda. We talked, really talked. He admitted he liked being the star of the family, that he never asked about my work because deep down, he didn't want the answer to challenge his place. I get it now, he said. You weren't behind, you were just on a road we couldn't see. I didn't say thank you. I said took you long enough. We laughed. For the first time in years, it wasn't strained. As for Callista, she handled the fallout with unexpected grace. The next time we met was at Halcyon's downtown office. She stood when I walked in, offered her hand with genuine respect. I should have known, she said. I've read hundreds of founder profiles. Yours was the only one that gave me goosebumps, and I didn't even know it was you. We all miss what's right in front of us sometimes, I said. We finalized the deal 2 weeks later. $115 million. Maris and I retained leadership of product innovation, full creative control, no longer ghosts, no longer guessing. My parents still stumble. They try, but the way they say we always believed in you still tastes like revisionism. I don't argue, because I don't need their validation anymore. Success isn't about being seen, it's about seeing yourself clearly and refusing to disappear. And now every time someone says, "You're the girl from Clarity Link," I smile. Not because I'm proud they know, but because I didn't need them to until I was already done building. And that is the quietest, sharpest revenge I'll ever serve. 6 months later, I stood in front of a classroom full of teenage girls. Most of them wore oversized hoodies and skeptical expressions. A few clutched notebooks like shields. All of them were brilliant. I was there as part of a local mentorship initiative, Women in Tech Real Talk Edition. I told them the truth, that I'd been underestimated, dismissed, talked over, and that I built a company while everyone around me thought I was floundering. One girl in the back raised her hand. What do you do when even your family doesn't believe in you? I smiled, not bitterly, but from the kind of place you only reach once you've stopped asking for permission. You believe in yourself louder, I said, and then you let the results speak for you. Back in Lindenbrook, the shifts were small but real. My mother no longer corrected people when they said I was an entrepreneur. My father introduced me at gatherings as my daughter, the founder. Damien and I joked about starting a podcast called Sibling Rival Tech. But I kept my boundaries, because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means reclaiming your story and deciding who gets access to it. Like what? These days, I still walk quietly, but not to stay hidden. I do it because I no longer need to prove anything. Clarity Link is live in 300+ clinics nationwide. Our impact data has been cited in medical journals, and every month I mentor one young woman trying to do the impossible. Possible with nothing but code grit and a reason. And as for the moment when it all changed, it wasn't the dinner, it wasn't the 115 million, it wasn't even Callista's realization. It was the second I chose not to shrink anymore. Have you ever let someone think you were small just to prove how big you could be? Drop your story below. Let's talk about quiet revenge, earned power, and building without permission. This was Sophia's revenge story. What would Sophia do next? Comment below.